Hello everyone, and welcome to what I hope will be a somewhat enthralling canter through the world of Mad Mavericks and working with unconventional people. My name is Paul Forrest and I'm a self-proclaimed Mad Maverick, but at the same time I'm often described as ever so slightly out there, a little bit crazy and somewhat unconventional. I have to say that that's what other people say of me more so than I declare. And sometimes I think that's accurate and sometimes I think it's less than accurate. But one thing is clear to me, it's genuinely helped throughout my career, but more so than that, more so than any of that, it's helped the businesses I've worked with, and it's delivered more to them than I perhaps have ever taken away from it. And I had no real idea of this at the time this was all happening. So as a Mad Maverick, sometimes you don't know how unconventional you really are. So today, I want to try and engage you with the idea of discovering unconventional people in your lives, in your workplace, and hopefully give you the impetus to go out there and engage with others in the workplace and channel your own inner crazy to try and unlock some of the transformational outcomes that you can achieve with that. However, there's a gap. And the gap here is relatively large. And I'm sure you'll all have come across this, but in any organization, the gap typically is between those people who are conventional and those people who are unconventional. And you might regard the conventionals as normal people. Well, look, normal for me is nothing but a setting on my washing machine at home in the garage. And when you look at this, we all look at each other and we might think normal, slightly less than normal, normal, a little bit out there. But actually these are labels, they're labels we apply, and it becomes very difficult to calibrate all of that. And the reason for that is because we become conditioned to accepting what is regarded as normal or not. And in the workplace, what that means is that we often end up with scenarios where people are protective of the hierarchies and the status quo and the way things currently work. They become fiercely protective of these things, and they don't really want to put themselves in a position where they are potentially compromising sometimes a power base that they've built. But it's worth it if you do, and it's worth it if you pursue working with unconventional people and helping them to unlock it. And I'm going to give you an example. So I want you to meet Joe. Joe joined my team. Joe joined my team as a business modeler. He was unconventional. You might suspect that we would work that out quite quickly. He turned up to the first meeting with me in an Hawaiian shirt, Bermuda shorts, and flip-flops. And given that I was working for one of the large advisory firms, that was probably less than normal attire. However, this person was a very, very, very good business modeler, very good with spreadsheets, good at their job, earned their paycheck every month, and went home with a job well done. We only really discovered how good he was and how unconventional he was at the point at which we threw him a hospital pass. We were asked to pitch for a piece of work with a television company that specialized in producing content around extreme sports activities around the world. And we were asked to pitch for this, but told you're not going to win it. You're just not going to. So that sideways pass to Joe meant that we didn't really expect a great deal back. But several hours later, he came back with a fully formed idea. We still weren't totally convinced. But by the next morning, he'd worked up that idea and came in to present his proposal, handwritten in a Sharpie on a full-size surfboard. Yeah, what have we got to lose? Nothing, right? So we said, off you go, fill your boots. So he delivered it. He delivered it in person through the front door of the office of the target client. They accepted it. We had a telephone call 3 or 4 hours later. They were a little bit shocked, mildly upset, not really expecting any of that. And then within probably half a day, we'd signed contracts and away we went. Unconventional. What we'd done was given him a license to operate. What we'd done was given him headroom. We'd given him the ability to go and try and do something ever so slightly different. We'd not just tolerated it, we'd encouraged it. admittedly for the wrong reasons, because we thought that it was a hospital pass and he had no prospects of winning. So Joe, great guy, but ultimately, how do you discover your own Joes in the workplace? You have to look close. You have to look beyond the normal in your organizations. Look beyond CVs, look beyond traditional experience. Personally, I think it's much more important to look at motivation, skills, and attitude. And I think those as signals give you a much firmer steer as to the extent to which someone's got more to offer than just their vanilla 9-to-5 activities. Now, you might have to dig deep for some of that in any organization, but there are some clues. And some of those clues are in the area of diversity, but that's not necessarily just diversity in terms of ethnicity or in terms of gender, but it's also diversity in terms of upbringing, or diversity in terms of work roles, or maybe even their hobbies. Who here considers that they've got a slightly out there hobby? Yeah, no one, really? I think if you all were to think about that ever so slightly longer and ask the person next to you, they might disagree. They might tell you they think you have actually got an ever so slightly out there hobby. And these are all really good indicators and signals about people who are in some way, shape or form capable of bringing that unconventional thought process to bear. But there are some really good examples in history. So Grace Hopper, you might be familiar with her, you might remember her name. Grace Hopper was a pioneering computer scientist. She was absolutely awesome, but she was a computer scientist at a time when the field was dominated by men. But she was also a US Navy admiral. And she was the person who put a lot of pioneering research into developing computer compilers, programming language compilers, at a time when people thought that computers could be used for nothing other than mathematical calculations. But she was unconventional and she challenged the norm. She spoke to her colleagues with authority and she asked them lots of questions and then called them out when they got the answers wrong. She was a very, very, very different person to that you would have expected in that period of time. She was unconventional, but she was more importantly, fearless. Or how about Rosalind Franklin? Some of you might remember Rosalind as being one of those pioneering researchers in and around DNA. And this again was somebody who was a woman operating in a field hugely dominated by men as researchers in DNA research. But she also was fearless and she was also brave enough to go up against her peers. She used X-ray diffraction technology in order to be able to see the DNA double helix. She didn't quite believe it at first, and she was slightly out there enough to the extent that what she actually did was she wrote an obituary for a previous piece of research that had been done and had it posted amongst her peers. Very brave at the time in a field hugely dominated by men undertaking this research. But she was fearless, she was bold, she was brave, and she was unconventional. So look, there are two examples there. But how do you untap or unleash some of this potential in your own organizations? Look, unfortunately, this is a difficult to do thing because you're trying to change normal circumstances. You're trying to encourage people to do things that are ever so slightly different. And I would encourage you all to create an environment, or at least tolerate an environment in your own workplace where people can be a little bit more free thinking, a little bit more opinionated, a little bit more out there. These are people who traditionally, when they are allowed to be unconventional, will be more adept at improvising, overcoming, and adapting to challenges and problems they face. And that's what you need in any organization. That ability to improvise, overcome, and adapt will undoubtedly unlock greater success in virtually any organization. However, there are some changes that you'll need. And one of the challenges is that those people who are mad mavericks and regarded as ever so slightly crazy or out there sometimes need a little bit of help with the freedom to operate, that license to operate. They need to have a communication environment that encourages them to be able to speak freely and opine. And their opinions have to be heard and they have to be recognized as important, even if they're not quite right or you don't agree with them. So it becomes a thing. And sometimes that thing also manifests itself as disruption within the team or within the business. So you have to be alert to this and be ready to put the brakes on at the point at which you may find that they're starting to dominate the team. But they'll be quite happy with that. They'll be happy with that freedom to operate, and they'll be happy to be brought back into check as appropriate. And there are many examples where this has worked particularly well. And I'll give you Steve Jobs as a starting point. And you'll all know he's unconventional, right? Steve Jobs was an unconventional business leader. But he surrounded himself by other people that he put trust and faith in, being equally unconventional, but in ever so slightly different ways. And that led to some groundbreaking outcomes in terms of technology. You think about Steve Jobs, he bought us devices like the iMac, the iPod, the iPad. How many people have got an iPad or a tablet computer? Yeah, pretty much everyone. This was a device we didn't know we needed, wanted, or were even ready for. And he came up with this and said, I think you're ready for it. Because I, with my colleagues, have worked out that this is what we think is next in the marketplace. But maybe Steve Jobs isn't your thing. Maybe you're not an Apple fan. Maybe you're a Google Pixel user. Well, in that case, what about Pixar? And Pixar have brought us some of the most groundbreaking animations in the world ever in history. And think about Pixar. They went toe to toe, nose to nose, face to face, head to head with Disney and beat them at their own game, this upstart animation business. But how do they do it? They are a band of fearless unconventionals, people who are slightly crazy. I mean, you only have to watch the content to see this. But think about it. The way they do it is they have these fantastic brain trust meetings. And brain trust meetings bring creatives, directors, writers, and pretty much anyone else with a perspective, including the finance team. And they bring them all to bear to sit there and discuss and wax lyrical how they can produce world-class animated content. And look at what we have. Toy Story, Up, or if you want that technological link, even WALL-E. Well, maybe that's not out there enough for you. Pixar not out there enough? What about Elon Musk? Elon Musk has brought us perhaps one of the most unconventional characters in modern business. Elon Musk turns up to a business meeting or a press conference or a board meeting, sings and dances. Do you see that a lot in the workplace? Maybe not. But look at what he's been able to do as a result of his unconventional thinking. Look at what he's done with our attitude towards electric vehicles, driverless vehicle technology, or even space exploration. He is revolutionizing that journey towards colonizing space. I mean, this is something very, very different, but he could only do it because he is fearless and bold and unconventional. So look, I'm going to encourage you all now. I want you to join us. Join us crazies. Join us Mad Mavericks. Join us unconventionals. No matter where you are on that scale, think about how you can channel your inner crazy, how you can channel your inner Mad Maverick, and create an environment that not only your colleagues can thrive in, but you can also thrive in, and do something that is ever so slightly different. I want you to think about how you bridge the gap, and I want you to think about how you make changes in your own organization so that you can achieve those transformational goals and outcomes. And just some final thoughts to leave you with here. We live in a fantastic time, a fantastic era. However, there are challenges out there. There's challenges with our economic landscape. There are challenges out there which really are quite worrying in terms of the geopolitical situation around the world. But there's challenges out there around the pace of change and how we have to deal with this. And this is where Mad Mavericks can help greatly. People who are unconventional thinkers can contribute great success here because they push the boundaries, because they think differently and they're prepared to think differently. They dream bold and they live fearlessly. And I encourage you to do the same. Remember, The only people mad enough to think that they can change the world are those who go on to actually change the world. Thank you very much.